Ara Ara! Welcome to Genshin Impact's MILF Challenge. This is a self-devised challenge in Genshin Impact where I only use tall female characters, or MILFs. I then use this restriction to clear high difficulty content. In this video, I will be explaining my attempt to beat the Spiral Abyss with only Ara Ara. Floor 9 has not changed for many iterations of the Spiral Abyss, since patch 2.0 actually, and it remains quite trivial, especially considering all of my characters' weapons and equipment have been maxed out. So in that case, let us talk about team compositions. It seems that it's often the case that you'll have one team that is min-maxed to the moon and back, and the other team is thrown together with much less rhyme or reason. This is also very true of my teams, though it seems that I may have stumbled onto some minor optimizations. I'll start off with my most efficient team, the Raiden Shogun's team. First on the team is Jean, the acting Grandmaster of the Knights of Favonius. She is the main healer for the team, and because of that, I've optimized her attack stats so that her heals are as powerful as possible. While this does give her decent offensive capabilities, my main focus here was still to have her heal as often and for as much as possible. Next is Rosaria, shadowy sister of the Church of Favonius. Although I have built her as a physical damage dealer and her supplemental extra damage is quite helpful, her kit also happens to include a lot of other synergies with the team. Rosaria uses the cryo element, which gives the team another element to play with, which is especially handy when it comes to destroying elemental shields such as those used by the Fatui or Abyss Heralds and Lectors. Her extra cryo and physical damage also enable the team to take on enemies that are immune to electro damage, should the need arise. Her elemental skill, Ravaging Confession, has one of the shortest cooldowns of all playable character skills. This makes it easier to consistently apply cryo to enemies, and it also helps generate a lot of energy particles to help get the team's elemental bursts back more easily. Finally, her elemental burst, Rites of Termination, also helps consistently apply cryo to enemies. On top of that, its low cooldown and energy cost make it more spammable, and helps contribute more Chakra Desiderata resolve stacks to the Raiden Shogun's Musou Shinsetsu elemental burst. Next up is Kujo Sara, the General of the Tenno Commission. Her elemental skill and burst are offensive support type abilities, giving a portion of her own attack stat to her party for 6 seconds. Naturally, her attack stat has been maximized in order to give the biggest boost possible to her teammates. Her electro element also helps the Raiden Shogun's damage output, as casting her elemental burst generates even more Chakra Desiderata resolve stacks for the Raiden Shogun. I will typically use her elemental burst, Subjugation Koko Sendo, right before I cast the Raiden Shogun's Musou Shinsetsu elemental burst. Finally, the crowning jewel of this team, the master of the Euthymmic Plane, her eternal excellency herself, the Raiden Shogun. At a highly optimized level, her elemental burst secret art Musou Shinsetsu is capable of utterly demolishing enemies with frightening speed. Specifically, building her with the Emblem of Severed Fate artifact set gives her much more power, as her kit scales very hard with the energy recharge stat. Her 4th Ascension passive skill, Enlightened One, gives extra electro damage and extra energy restoration from her elemental burst for every percentage point of energy recharge above 100%, which is the base level. The first stat, the electro damage, is handy because it means she will have a high level of electro damage even without using a goblet artifact that specializes in that stat, and she can use her goblet artifact slot to build other stats that she might need. The Raiden Shogun's elemental burst will restore a small amount of energy for every character in the team after it is used. The passive Enlightened One means that building energy recharge on her will help her give more energy back to all of her team members, enabling them to use their own elemental bursts more often. This feeds back into the Raiden Shogun's damage output, as party members using elemental bursts will give her Chakra Desiderata resolve stacks. These resolve stacks then increase the Raiden Shogun's damage every time she uses her own elemental burst. All in all, this means that the team is able to generate energy quickly, spam elemental bursts, and quickly obliterate enemies with the Raiden Shogun's elemental burst.
無駄な努力をやめたらその命いただいたわ。呪言その程度か。律令命ずる決闘せよ。さようなら。律令に従え。入れよ。呪言律令直振動の権限やっはっへいわめきなさい。それ命ずるはっと諦めなさい。降参しなさい。姿を残す律令直はっ表層よ化身となれ。魂よ粉々よ走行の恩。やっそれ震えなさい。諦める。風の神よ我らを導きたまえ。浄土を開放せ。稲光すなわち永遠なり。はっはっやったふんとんやっ裁きの雷いざ勝負。パーフェクト許さない。風よ私に応えるのだ。聖なる来光ここより弱滅の時。てっはっやっそこはっ見切りました。
Floor 10 also has not changed since patch 2.0. Because of this, and the relatively low level of the enemies, the floor is still somewhat trivial. I will admit it is somewhat harder than floor 9, and this time I was just barely able to earn all 9 stars on this floor. The important things on this floor are killing the Fatui skirmishers quickly so that you don't have to kill them through their shields, and bringing along consistent sources of elemental damage so that you can break the Abyss Lector and Abyss Herald's shields more quickly, without having to wait for skill cooldowns. With the remaining time on floor 10, I will talk about my other team, my more cobbled together team. First we have Ningguang, the Lady of the Jade Chamber, and the dedicated healer of this team. That's right, I said healer. Now, you might be saying to yourself, "You're insane, Maid. She doesn't even have a single healing ability in her kit." And, well, you'd be right. However, there is only one single healer available among all of the MILF characters, and that is Jean, who is already in the other team. So, I decided to slap the prototype Amber onto Ningguang and see how far it could take me. Now, the prototype Amber heals all party members for a percentage of their own HP every time the wielder casts their elemental burst. This means its healing does not scale with Ningguang's HP as I mistakenly thought in the past. Instead, it scales with healing effectiveness. In this playthrough, I switched over to the Maiden Beloved artifact set. This actually made the healing output from Ningguang much more noticeable, and may have actually saved me a few times in this run. I was also lucky that her elemental burst, Star Shatter, has a very low cooldown and energy cost, meaning I could more reliably spam the heals and actually keep my team alive. Next is Shenhe, the Divine Damsel of Devastation. In this team, I have positioned her in a more supporting role. I rely on her passive Spirit Communion Seal, and the physical resistance decreasing effects of her elemental burst, Divine Maiden's Deliverance, to augment and increase the damage output of my main damage dealer Eula. Equipping the Favonius Spear also makes her generate a lot of elemental particles, and helps my team get their elemental bursts back more easily. Next up is a newcomer to this challenge, having only been released this patch, the head priestess of the Grand Narukami Shrine, Miko. Her damage output needs are a little all over the place, but for her build, I focus primarily on crits and energy recharge. I use the Emblem of Severed Fate artifact set merely to augment her elemental burst's power. Miko naturally gets some crit chance percentage from her ascensions, making it a little easier to build a more crit-focused build. I also managed to squeeze a little bit of elemental mastery into her build, which further augments her damage output when she manages to create elemental reactions. Speaking of elemental reactions, she has a place on this team because her elemental skill Yakan Evocation Sessho Sakura can hit enemies even when she is not on the field, and her elemental reactions with Cryo create the Superconduct reaction, which reduces enemies' physical resistance, further increasing the damage of our main damage dealer Eula. Finally, we have this team's main damage dealer, the captain of the reconnaissance company, the Spindrift tonight, the end-user license agreement herself, Eula. My build for Eula seeks to maximize her physical damage output, utilizing the Pale Flame artifact set for just that purpose. Because the damage from her elemental skill Ice Tide Vortex and elemental burst Glacial Illumination have much bigger multipliers on the physical damage portions of their attacks, increasing her physical damage will more effectively increase her overall damage output. Another nice thing about this build is that it also makes her normal attacks hit quite hard, especially when they crit. However, the bulk of her damage still comes from her skill and burst.
無限化せよショックせ魂よ粉々よその命いただいたわ決闘せよよっいざ勝負パーディクト油断するなよ浄土を開墾ここより弱滅の時せっせっしっ裁きの雷震えなさい許さない諦めてやいざ勝負風よ私に応えるのだ逃げ道はありません眠るのに許さないいざ雷に無我の境地やせっ律令直競争よ決して入れよ命ずる神道の権限律令呪言わめきなさいそれ降参しなさい無駄な努力をやめたら入れよ決闘せよ憲兵王は立つわめきなさい神聖なる恩恵早く砕け散れはいよっ悪愛なる恩素晴らしき神取るに足らないわその命いただいたわ好機進化を遂げよ神聖なる恩恵やっ律令に従え万物の教決闘せよそれ降参しなさい素晴らしき神無駄な努力をやめて魂のわめきなさい入れよアビスに使えよ見切りました諦めてパーディクトアビスの潮なり風の神我らに導きたまえやっ翼よ 千なる来光。ここより弱滅の時。たっはっ裁きの雷。さいざ勝負。許さない。眠るのよ。風よ、私に逃げ道はありません。狂乱の波は満ちた。さあ、いざ万物を滅ぼせ。稲光、すなわち永遠なり。はっと震えなさい。許さない。
Both my teams happened to make short work of the enemies on floor 11, chamber 1. In the first half, the Might of the Raiden Shogun nukes the enemy's health bars very quickly. Then, I can take out the Abyss Herald's shield using my rotation of skills, as well as Rosaria's cryo element, which just so happens to be the elemental weakness of the Abyss Herald's hydro shield. Then, in the second half, my elemental burst combos make quick work of the enemies, breaking the Whopper Flower's elemental states and preventing them from using their powerful charged attacks is a good way to avoid unnecessary damage. I also saved Eula's elemental burst to more quickly take down the two Geo Vishaps at the end.
風よ、私に答える。裁きの雷。狂乱の波は満ちた。万物を滅ぼせ。諦め。愚か。逃げ道はありません。震えなさい。やっ直律令。諦め。天心直送命ずる。来光意図美しきかな。せっよっ、それ。その命いただいたわ。決闘せよ。そら。粉々よ。はっよっよっ、はいはっ。姿を残さん。直わめきなさい。取るに足らないわ。入れよ。よっ、決闘せよ。それ。諦めなさい。降参しなさい。姿を残さ呪言直。競争よ、決心となれ。神道の権限。律令直命ずる。兵糧のようにうなれ。それ。目には目を。よっ、それ。それ。
On to the second chamber of floor 11. Despite some early setbacks, I was still able to take out the first half relatively quickly. Getting frozen several times and almost losing the Raiden Shogun did stall me out at the beginning, but once I was able to get the Raiden Shogun's elemental burst off and thus loop my party's elemental bursts, I made somewhat quick work of the rest of the enemies. The second half is much the same, as using my elemental burst combos also lets me take down the enemies quickly. I will typically use Shenhe's skill and burst first in order to buff up my party's damage, and then throw down either Miko's or Eula's skill and burst combos. Of course, Yai's elemental skill Sessho Sakura can also act as automatic attack turrets, providing an extra boost of damage even when she's not on the field.
さばきのイカズチ。この程度の傷。諦めて。それ。やっ見切りました。やっ逃げ道はありません。とパーフェクト。許さない風よ、私に応えるのだ。浄土を開放し無我の境地へ。やっせよっ諦めて眠るのよ。いざ勝負。剣に誓う。いざ勝負。来戦。聖なる来光、ここより弱滅の時。さようなら。無駄な努力をやめたら。魂よ、へい粉々よ。結晶せよ。はっはっやっそれ。降参しなさい。命ずる。はっはっ天心直送。わめきなさいよっ。入れよかったよってそれよっ粉々よよっ。へいわめきなさい。律令せやそれやそれ。有限なる来店呪言律令さようなら。命ずる。粉々よよっ。それ律令に従え。結晶せよやっそれ。直呪言はっはっ降参しなさい。直呪言律令せ来光意と美しきかな。直呪言直トルフその命いただいたわ。粉々よ憲兵恩を断つよっ。はい砕け散れ。はっはっはっ。
Chamber 3 of Floor 11 was also fairly quick. I was able to group up the enemies in the first half and take them out with a single use of the Raiden Shogun's burst. The second half only took a bit of patience and perseverance to ensure all my team members stayed alive. Ningguang was useful not just for her healing, but also because her attacks can create shields and her Jade Screen elemental skill can block certain enemy projectiles. The team's overall access to consistent elemental damage also helped me break the Abyss Lecter's shields faster.
さばきのイカズチ。 せよ。私に答えるのだ。パーフェクト。逃げ道はありません。諦めて。いざ勝負。剣に誓う。イカズチに無我の境地。無駄な努力をやめてよ。律令ショック。律令魂よ。降参しなさい。諦めなさい。命ずる。はっやっと。真実に耳を傾け。呪言。天心直送入れよ。有限なるライフ。律令チョック。呪言。無駄な努力をやめたら。さよう血で血を洗おうかしら。取るに足らないわ。それそれよっ、早く決闘せよ。諦めなさい。降参しなさい。万物の教示。命ずる。粉々よ。走行のオン。ジャッジメント。神聖なる恩恵。不利な状況。取るに足らないわ。その命いただいたわ。無礼者。律令。万物の教示。神聖なる恩恵。諦めなさい。いや降参しなさい。神聖なる恩恵。チョック。呪言チョック。来光意と美しきかな。万物の教示。いやその命いただいたわ。入れよ。表層よ。決心となれ。無駄な努力をやめたら。降参しなさい。具現化せよ。呪言。やは律令呪言。諦めなさい。さようなら。魂よ。姿を残さん。姿を残さん。律令。兵糧のようにうなれ。目には目を。
The start of Floor 12 features a fight with more Rift Hounds. Although their corrosion debuff makes them a little more difficult, proper dodging and HP management with Jean can easily prevent any party members from falling. Rift Hounds are quite slippery, especially when they reach full Fury charges. However, being at max Fury also gives them a slight nerf to the elemental resist of the target Fury element. In this case, their lowered Electro resist made them die faster to the Raiden Shogun's attacks.
風よ、私に応えるのだ。許さない。聖なる来光、ここより弱滅の時。やっヒュッてやっ見切りました。震えなさい。やるわね。風の神よ、我らを導きたまえ。いざ勝負。はあ、諦めて。それやっはっ眠るのよ、許さない。剣に誓う。浄土を開墾、無我の境地に。やっ
The Pathismal Vishaps in the second half of Floor 12 Chamber 1, although quite beefy, are still somewhat easy to take down. Heavy attacks can knock them out of some of their attack patterns, and otherwise getting out of range of the large AoEs can be important to taking less damage and surviving. I also tried to get them to group up so that my AoE attacks could hit both of them as much as possible.
いただいたわ。やっ決闘せよ。はい、それ逃がさないわよ。早く投降しなさい。はっふっわめきなさい。はっやっそれやっ決闘せよ。それ入れよ。はっってほっや魂よ。律令に従え。わめきなさい。それ走行のオン。早く目には目を。よっよっふっはいそれよっはっさようなら。取るに足らないわ。それちょっとビリビリさせないでね。これはお仕置きよ。ふっはっしびれなさい。はっはっやっ命ずる。諦めと降参しなさい。取るに足らないわ。逃がさないわよ。それ無駄な努力をやめたら粉々よ。いでよ。や魂よ。競争よ。へい剣氷恩を断つ。よっそれそれ せよそれはいやっ取るに足らないわその命いただいたわ諦めなさいちょっとビリビリさせないとねはっしびれなさいしびれさせちゃうわよはっ魂よ天心直送走行のオン砕け散れよっはっはっ早く
Floor 12's second chamber is where the difference between the two teams really starts to show. The Raiden Shogun's team in the first half can take down the enemies in almost under a minute, while the Ragtag team struggles to take down their enemies, requiring 6 minutes or more to defeat them. While the second half enemies are arguably tougher being bosses, I am still satisfied with my team assignments, since the mechanical enemies in the first half would have resisted Eula's physical damage much more and still have been just as hard to take down. The Raiden Shogun makes quick work of the Ruin Graders here, and the only thing that you really need to watch out for are their spinning attacks, as those can combo you to death. The second half of Floor 12, Chamber 2 features a fight with the Golden Wolf Lord boss enemy. The Golden Wolf Lord is a difficult enemy, since its attacks also apply corrosion and can be difficult to dodge. It also spends a lot of its time in the air, meaning that aerial attackers like archers or catalyst users automatically targeting attacks can be useful to dealing damage to it. As you may have noticed by now, I've been using Lisa instead of Miko, and there are a few reasons for this. Miko's normal attacks are stuck to the ground, meaning they can't hit the Golden Wolf Lord when it's flying through the air. Miko's Sessho Sakura also only targets enemies' current positions, which means that as the Golden Wolf Lord snakes through the air, its twists and turns allow it to dodge Yai's Sessho Sakura attacks more often than not. I thought that I might need Lisa to deal damage to the Golden Wolf Lord while it flies through the air. However, in the end, this didn't really seem to matter. In previous attempts, I died to the corrosion damage and the difficult attacks of the Golden Wolf Lord. But as it turns out, what I needed to beat this boss wasn't ranged attackers that could hit it while flying. All I needed was a little bit of luck and to ultimately just get good. I ended up beating the Golden Wolf Lord primarily by dodging its attacks and smacking it with Eula while it was on the ground. One of the best attacks for this is when it fires its mouth laser, as the move is easily dodgeable and it stays on the ground for a long time for the attack's duration, during which you can hit it with quite a few smacks of Eula's claymore. Of course, once it gets below about 66% health, it will gain a shield and summon Rifthound skulls that need to be destroyed. The skulls take the most damage from Geo attacks, and Ningguang was able to make quick work of them. Once its shield is broken, it will lie on the ground stunned for some time, and I was able to use this time to unleash Eula's skill and burst combo to deal massive damage to it. Although this did not kill it immediately, all it took to take it down after that was dodging its attacks and waiting for it to use its laser again, so that I could hit it while it was on the ground.
その命いただいたわ。取るに足らないわ。やるわね。取るに足らない。律令に従え。命ずる。わめきなさい。兵糧のようにうなれ。ジャッジメント。よっはっはいはっよっそこよっはい粉々よ。はっさようなら。魂よ命ずる。結晶せよ。それよっふんふっよっやるね。血で血を洗おうかしら。無駄な努力をやめたら降参しなさい。それふっそれやっはいやっ取るに足らないわ。それはっわめきなさい。ふっそれ結晶せよ。さようなら。無駄な努力をやめたら。わめきなさい。よっはい取るに足らないわ。粉々よ。やっ表層よ。それわめきなさい。はいよっそれ降参しなさい。無駄な努力をやめたら。はいや諦めなさい。さようなら。それ
Once again, the Raiden Shogun's team makes quick work of the enemies, securing the win in under a minute. I will say though that luring all three enemies to group up together was very important in order to get a fast time.
浄土を開口せ稲光すなわち永遠なりそこふっふっやっふっはっせっふっはっはっパーフェクト諦めてふっそれはあ風よ私に
The final fight of the Spiral Abyss features a special fight with the Coral Defenders boss, the Rheinbiter and Bolt Eater Baptismal Vishaps, but this time with a twist. Both Vishaps must be killed within 10 seconds of each other, or the remaining one will revive the downed one to 40% of its maximum health. And because they have a lot of health, it's really not feasible to take them down multiple times within the time limit. Due to the revival mechanic, this floor actually took several attempts, as I kept failing to kill both within 10 seconds of each other. Over. And over. And over. And over again. However, I was determined to beat this floor despite the fact that I had lost a party member and was only down to 3 characters. This fight once again required me to get good at the game. I had to learn how to properly dodge the boss's attacks and hit them at the right times. Luckily, Ningguang's Jade Screen skill also helped block their rapid fire combo, making it a little bit easier to dodge that attack. It was also imperative to dodge their cleansing shower orb attacks as much as possible so as to avoid the energy drain from those attacks. Using Ningguang's skill to generate energy particles was also important so that she could get back her burst more often and heal more often, which kept my team alive. In terms of offense, I made sure to switch targets between the two so that I depleted their HP bars somewhat evenly. I also made sure to use Shenhe to generate a lot of energy for my team so they could get their elemental bursts back more quickly. For the final blow, I got lucky that the 2 enemies managed to group up, and I unleashed Eula's burst, dealing enough damage to completely take out one and leaving just enough health on the other that I was able to take it down with a few more attacks from Eula.
降参しなさい。諦めなさい。それ決闘せよ。はい。その命いただいたわ。取るに足らないわ。さた競争よ、決心となれ。粉々よ、憲兵、恩を断つ。よっよっ、目には目を。それふっはっ、無礼者降参しなさい。あら、無駄な努力をやめたら。取るに足らないわ。魂よ、わめきなさい。よっよっ、その命いただいたわ。命ずる。粉々よ。諦めなさい。天心直送とわめきなさい。早く兵糧のようにうなれ。よっよっ、はい。降参しなさい。魂よ、はっ、いでよ。粉々よ。よっ、わめきなさい。それはっ、それよっ、決闘せよ。その命いただいたわ。取るに足らないわ。とはい、律令に従え。わめきなさい。それ走行の恩。さようなら。
This has been Genshin Impact Spiral Abyss MILF Challenge Patch 2.5. Thank you very much for watching!